Chapter 9, Part 2. He caught a banana boat bound for Brazil and travelled up the Amazon, and he was as happy there as he had been wretched in England. He had been terrified of the butler, but alligators didn't trouble him. He made friends with the Indians. He found it easy to make living as a collector. The only time he was unhappy and afraid was when he was asleep in his hammock and dreamt he was back at Westwood or at school. And when Finn was born, he decided to bring him up to love and respect the Indians and never let anyone drive him back to his old home. And so the years passed. Sir Aubrey wrote off his youngest son. He was probably in a gutter somewhere, and serve him right. Dudley was the best person to inherit Westwood. But then something awful happened. Dudley was killed in the hunting field. The horse was all right, and people were glad of that because it was a good horse. But Dudley wasn't. He broke his neck. Sir Aubrey was exceedingly upset. Who would take over for him when he was dead and look after Westwood with its 2 lakes and its 3 woods and its farm, and who would give orders in the house with its 47 rooms? He thought about this, and then he decided that what mattered was that whoever it should have was the... He decided that what mattered was that whoever it was should have the Taverner blood. Sir Aubrey was very keen on blood, and he always had been. His daughter Joan had it, of course, but she was married to a man called Smith, and had already given birth to 3 daughters, one after the other, and daughters were no good. It was only males who could inherit Westwood. So Aubrey decided to give her one more chance. Joan lived on the edge of the estate. It was her 4th child. If her 4th child was a boy, he would leave Westwood to him, though of course he would have to change his name to Smith Taverner. But it was not to be. When the midwife came out of Joan's bedroom and said, "It's another lovely little girl," Sir Aubrey was driven away from his daughter's house in a dreadful temper, and for weeks people were afraid to speak to him. But then a brave old lady, a second cousin, came to see him and said, "Don't forget, Aubrey, that you still have another son. If you mean Bernard, he is not my son any longer. He was an ungrateful, cowardly scoundrel, and if he darkens my door again, I'll take my whip to him." But the cousin said blood was blood, and why didn't he try to find Bernard? And after a while, Sir Aubrey saw the sense of this. Blood was blood. There was no getting round it. Better that Bernard should inherit Westwood than a total stranger. Only, where was Bernard? They put an advertisement in the Times and a lot of other newspapers, asking Bernard Taverner to come forward, and he would hear something to his advantage. But for a long time, nothing happened. Then, when they had almost given up hope, they had a letter from the editor of a magazine called The Naturalist, which was published in New York and printed learned articles about animals and plants. This is what the editor wrote. Dear Sir Aubrey, I happened to see in the Times of last October a request for information about Bernard Taverner. Taverner was a regular contributor to my journal, an outstanding naturalist and observer of wildlife. I asked him for a piece about the manatee, a rare South American water mammal. Instead of his article, I received this letter from his son, which I enclose. Dear Sir, I'm very sorry, but my father, Bernard Taverner, died 2 months ago. His canoe overturned in the rapids and he was drowned. I'm sending back the cheque you wrote him because it belonged to him, and anyway, I'm too young to have a bank account. Yours faithfully, F. Taverner. Now, needless to say, this letter caused great excitement. By Jove, he had a son then, said Sir Aubrey. Well, our problems are solved. We'll send for the boy and train him up to run Westwood. It shouldn't take long to knock him into shape. No reason to suppose he'll be namby-pamby like his father. But how to find the boy was another matter. There was no address in the letter, and the only thing the editor knew was that Bernard's mail went through a postbox in Manaus. That's not where he lives, though, he wrote. He was always travelling. I believe he had an Indian wife. But this Sir Aubrey refused to believe. Instead, he wrote 2 letters addressed to the son of Bernard Taverner, one to the postbox in Manaus, and one care of the bank manager who had looked after Bernard's accounts. In both letters, he explained what had happened at Westwood and said that the way was now open for Bernard's son to come back and take up his inheritance. Finn got both the letters and did not answer either of them. Instead, he began to get Arabella ready for her journey with his auntie. Nothing Sir Aubrey had written made him feel that he could ever return to his father's home. Sir Aubrey wrote again and sent a cable. Then, losing patience, he got in touch with the director of the firm of Wesley and Kinnear, private detectives, and asked them to send 2 of their best men out to the Amazon to find the boy and bring him back. And 2 months later, the Crows arrived in Manaus.